From Hillsboro, Virginia, Loudoun debates. Today's debate, the Catoctin District. Your candidates are John J. Ellis and Caleb Kirshner. Brought to you by the Coalition of Loudoun Towns, the Loudoun Times-Mirror, and Loudoun Now. Live streaming provided by Jeff in High Def.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Hillsboro. Welcome to the Coalition of Loudoun Towns debate for the Catoctin District, the new Catoctin District Board of Supervisors. Thank you all for coming, and let's have a round of applause for ourselves for coming here. All right. All right. So it's fairly simple here. We're just we've got a number of questions that were put together by the Coalition of Loudoun Towns, which is comprised of all the 7 towns of Loudoun County and all the mayors in this organization, and we try to work cooperatively together. And I believe this is the second round of debates that we've held over the past 4 years. So we're really pleased to be able to do this, and we're doing it in cooperation with the Loudoun Times-Mirror and Loudoun Now newspaper. And we will, the questions will be asked by Mr. Norm Steyer, editor of Loudoun Now. Yes, yes. Karen Graham from Loudoun Times-Mirror. And Mayor Scott Ramsey from Round Hill. We also have with us the mayor of Leesburg, Kelly Burke. Kelly, will you stand up? I know Bridge Littleton, mayor of Middleburg, was intending to be here, but something came up and he couldn't make it tonight. I also know that Supervisor Buffington was intending to be here. However, his wife is getting a very nice, prestigious award tonight, and he was unable to make it here tonight, but he sends his best wishes to all of us. And I would like to acknowledge the Blue Ridge District Supervisor, Tony Buffington, for his tremendous service to Western Loudoun County over the past 8 years. And let's give him a round of applause. And so the Blue Ridge District no longer exists, and it is now the new Catoctin District, which includes most of the former Catoctin District and a good portion of the old Blue Ridge District. So, so for many of us, or many of you, it's as if, you know, it's a whole new district, and we've got a new supervisor. So what I would like to first just kind of go over the ground rules real quick, and it's fairly simple. We're going to flip a coin to decide who introduces themselves first or last, however they wish to do that. And then we have a series of questions we'll ask. And the loser of the flip gets the first question first, gets to answer the question first, and then we rotate going throughout the whole debate. So we'll ask the questions. On occasion, I may interject to elicit a little more of a response, or make sure that we get an answer, or maybe there's a really good follow-up that comes from the discussion. So we'll try to keep it on track to close by 8:30 or 8:40, since we're starting a few minutes late. But I think that's it. Am I missing anything, Scott? Okay. Then there'll be a closing statement at the end, and we do the reverse order of whoever chooses to open will be the first to close, right? Okay, so let's do a real quick flip of the coin. Yeah, it's really confusing, I know, but all right. we're yeah, that makes it really even worse, right? Okay, let's call it in the air.
Who's calling? Me or John?
Oh, you're the incumbent. Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'll call heads.
Okay, heads. Tails.
Oh. You won something anyway so far. Good job.
Okay, so would you like to go first, or would you like to go last? You're going to defer the kickoff. Okay. All right. So we have left the intros to yourselves to introduce yourselves, and you have, I think, 2.5 minutes.
Well, which is it?
Which is it? Which is it? 2 minutes? All right. Let's make it 2 minutes. You can do it in 2 minutes.
I want 5 minutes. How's that? No.
Okay. 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for Colt and everyone who's here to really enjoy this. I've been looking forward to this, John. Thank you. A worthy opponent. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Frederick, Maryland. I was a farm boy. I moved to Loudoun in 1995. So I've been here 28 years, and I've seen a lot of change. And since I've been here, I worked as a lobbyist downtown, working on behalf of education policy and nonprofits. I'm a finance major in my undergraduate at George Mason. I went to and passed my bar at George Mason Law School, and I worked as a prosecutor for many years. And I started a small business. I have the largest law firm in downtown Leesburg. We have about 13 lawyers. But one thing I forgot about this. My wife is at home. I have 6 boys. Well, the 6th one's on the way. He'll be here very soon, coming between now and Monday. So if I leave early, you'll know why. But one thing I have noticed since I've been on the board, and that is, if we fail to invest in Western Loudoun, we're going to lose it. And we have a really, really small window of opportunity to get some of the things done that we need to get done. The pillars of my candidacy and the time I've been on the board have been focused really on 4 things: preservation, infrastructure, pro-business, and low tax, and getting our education back on track. And you might ask me, well, why are we in jeopardy? Well, if you saw back during the redistricting process, Colt came with a great map. It was immediately dismissed by all of our Eastern supervisors. And then because they could outvote us, and now we have less representation in the West in Loudoun County. And then I watched what happened in Prince William in December of this year, and they opened up their equivalent of their rural policy area to development, and they outvoted those who represented the West. But I'm a person that gets things done, and I've got a plan to make sure we permanently preserve Western Loudoun. And I've had a lot of success in my first term, and I'll just rattle off a few things and I'll stop. I brought a $73 million fiber to the home infrastructure project, bringing it nearly to 9,000 homes in Western Loudoun. I've resurrected the PDR program that's coming to us next spring. We're working on it currently in finance. I've obtained funding for Sweet Run Park by lobbying Richmond. I've advanced desperately needed improvements on Route 15 North, South, Route 9, and Route 7. I fought for transparency in our schools despite the ridicule. I've opposed Democrat tax and spend policies that this board has put forward. I've promoted our agriculture and tourism in Western Loudoun and ag education in our schools. And finally, I have championed our towns and our villages, including preservation of the landmark in Waterford, which was my item that I brought to the board. So let's keep this train going.
All right. Thank you. All right. So you went 3 minutes, and we're going to give you 3 minutes. Okay?
Thank you.
No, that's okay.
All right, thanks very much. And just to echo what Roger said, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. Really appreciate it. This is how democracy works, and so it's great to see you all. I'm going to talk first about my general approach to this campaign and to the office of supervisor, and then second, just go through some of my my main goals. So I'm an independent, and I'm not beholden to any party agenda or any special interest, and particularly to developers. My campaign is focused on the concerns of all of Western Loudouners, regardless of their political affiliation. We are down to only one district that is predominantly rural, and we need to speak with one voice when we're trying to defend our interests in Leesburg. So I want to get us all together to do that. I'm retired, kind of, but my friends and family know that I'm not exactly a gentleman of leisure, and I do get involved in a lot of things. I'm concerned I will work full-time as supervisor if I'm elected, and I'm particularly concerned that I think supervisors rely too heavily on county staff who don't really understand what's going on in Western Loudoun. And so I think we need to really watch them and look over them carefully, which I'll do. My goals are similar. The main thing is we need to preserve the historic charm and character of our area, which is critical not only for our quality of life and our lifestyle, but also for ensuring the future of our farming and tourism industries. We need to have this area stay the way it is, stay as appealing as it is. We need to we all know these days, we need to get a handle of traffic congestion. And my priority there is not expansion, but safety. We need to do safety improvements. I agree with Caleb, we need to get a control over county spending, which grew $1 billion or a third basically in the last 4 years. Another point of difference is that we need to use the data center revenues that are coming in to invest in the future and also for tax relief, and particularly tax relief to homeowners and other businesses, because we need a diversified economy. Our neighborhoods and our way of life are under severe pressure from development that is literally out of control. There are big differences between Caleb and me, not so much on the goals, but on the ways of achieving that. And so I ask for your support and support of all the voters in the Catoctin district to stand up to developers and preserve this wonderful area for future generations. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we are going to begin the questioning with Mayor Scott Ramsey. If he can figure out how to turn on the microphone on the bottom, press on the bottom. There you go. And hold it there. Hold it on the bottom. Just press till the light comes on.
Okay, is this live?
You got it.
All right.
All
Do
right.
I have to hold?
No.
I can let go. Good. All right. So, first question, and it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. It's about data centers. So, Loudoun is the world's data center capital. Property taxes paid by data centers pay for a significant portion of county services, but many county residents have expressed concern that the facilities have a negative impact on the environment, especially because of the high demand for electricity and the corresponding transmission infrastructure, that they're not aesthetically pleasing, that they're driving land values in eastern Loudoun too high. So, what, if anything, should the county do differently regarding its approach to data centers?
Caleb. Yeah. Oh.
Did I misunderstand that?
No, you're right.
Okay.
You're right. Sorry.
Either way,
First on the question. Yeah. Sorry, guys. 90 seconds, yeah.
All right, thanks very much. I think we are going to have differences of opinion on this. My understanding is Caleb has been very supportive of the data center industry and has been supportive of actually reducing the taxes on data centers. I feel very much that we need to ask our data centers to shoulder a greater part of the burden that Mayor Ramsey was describing in terms of environmental effects, the effects on other businesses in terms of driving up land costs, labor costs, and other things. I think we also need to, as the data center revenues come up, we need to make sure that we don't let spending get out of control and relax our discipline on spending. So we need to really be serious about a reserve fund, establishing a reserve fund. So I would favor maintaining the current tax, differentiating the tax on data centers from the taxes on other businesses, maintaining or increasing the taxes on data centers in order to invest in other things like purchase of development rights and to provide some tax relief.
Very good.
So let me just start by saying that our data center industry is an incredible partner. And let me just throw out a few statistics for you. We currently have 160 data centers in the county. In 2016, they provided $146 million in our budget. Now they provide over $600 million in our budget, to our budget in tax revenue, which ultimately that covers our whole entire operating budget on the county side, which I would say that's an incredible partner. And if you talk to our Prince William or Fairfax or our partnering Nova counties, they are envious of us because of our data center. So I believe we need to be friendly to them. With that said, I've never recommended reducing taxes. I've always recommended keeping a very fair tax on them and not outpricing them outside the market. And I do believe, and I am the one that have brought up using 5 cents, it's my plan, of the data center money that comes from personal property tax and data centers to pay for a PDR program. It's about $9 to $10 million a year. If we did that over a 10-year period, we would result in $100,000 going to a PDR program, which would help purchase the development rights and help bolster what's going on here in the county. I do believe, however, we have to be careful where we put our data centers. Obviously, up next to residential is always problematic. We've just recently worked through that in the zoning ordinance rewrite. Am I out of time? Yeah, I don't ever quite know. So data centers are a huge partner. We need to make sure we continue to foster them, but obviously we have to be careful where we put them. And some of that is by right, but others we have some level of control over.
Okay. All right. Karen.
Okay, the next question is about transfer of development rights. Should the next board implement a transfer of development rights program wherein data center developers building in Eastern Loudoun may purchase additional by right floor area ratio and/or building height by paying landowners in Western Loudoun to give up development rights on their land? Should implementing a TDR program be a top priority for the new board?
So a TDR program is definitely part of my concept and my theme of let's invest in the West. But a TDR program is only one. And for those of you who don't know what a TDR program, it's essentially one area of a county, in this case, will send their property rights to another area and they can be purchased. And the question mentions a floor area ratio, FAR, for data centers in certain area. And Mayor Bridge Littleton has come up with a great concept. And I have championed it. We have had discussions about it. We have brought it to TLUC and we've kicked it around quite a bit. I'm going to tell you, we're going to champion that. We're going to push forward on that. I think there's common ground that we can find with our Eastern supervisors, but I'll be really frank with you. Our Eastern supervisors have been really resistant to that because they lose a certain level of control over how data centers are developed. But the data centers have also talked to me some, and they have a level of interest in it, and they think if it's done in certain areas, not around residential, perhaps around the Dulles Airport, which is largely commercial, we may be able to make that work. But again, a TDR program is just one tool in the toolbox. We need a PDR program, and we need to continue to protect our conservation easements throughout this county, which quite frankly has, and I have no time card, so I really apologize. But
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. And so we need to continue to protect our conservation. So the Invest in the West concept that I have put forward is a threefold punch. Continue to protect our conservation easements, which have preserved over 83,000 acres in Western Loudoun. People don't realize that. We see a development go in, but you don't realize something's been put in permanent easement. Bring a PDR program with $10 million a year, funded by data center, 5 cents on the data center, and then champion a TDR program and identify what areas we can send those development rights and where we can receive them.
Time. Thank you. John.
Thanks. So one of the things that I and some friends did about 7 years ago is establish a group called Save Rural Loudoun. And at that time, almost immediately, 7 years ago, we started advocating for both purchase of development rights and transfer of development rights. We're very disappointed that nothing has happened so far, and we're very eager to make progress on this. A couple of years, 1 year, or I'm not sure, I don't recall the exact timing, but a little while ago, the Board of Supervisors considered both PDR and TDR, and sorry for using those acronyms for those of you who aren't familiar with them, and decided to not do transfer of development rights. We were very disappointed by that because we think transfer of development rights actually has a lot more potential power than purchase of development rights. I would love to see us make progress on that. The additional concern about transfer of development rights is that it does require staff. It is a somewhat staff-intensive thing, so that's one of the considerations that we have to have. I would love to see both those programs. As Caleb says, all of these things are tools, individual tools, and none of them are sufficient in themselves. And the one thing I'd like to say about easements is that when Caleb talks about preserving easements, it's important to be aware that what he's talking about is maintaining the highest possible development density in Western Loudoun in order to incentivize easements. The thing about that is it also incentivizes development, which is the problem that we're having.
Time. All right. Okay. I think we're going to go on to the next question, which is related. Norm?
Shoot.
You guys have both addressed this a little bit in your statements and the other question. This is PDRs. Should the county use local tax revenue to fund a purchase of the rights program, development rights program, wherein the county pays rural landowners to give up their development rights on their land? Should implementing a PDR program be a top priority for the new board?
Yes. And as I mentioned earlier, I think this is one of the things, and I think we agree on this, this is one of the things that we should be using the big influx of data center tax revenue to fund, is to fund purchase of development rights. Again, even with the amount of funding that Mr. Kirshner was mentioning, it's not enough to make a huge difference. So one of the things I want to emphasize is that, yes, we absolutely do need to use purchase of development rights. We do need to fund it, and data center revenues are a great way to do that. We need to do more, and this is the one thing I want to emphasize, is that none of these things are enough. We actually have to reduce the number of houses that can be built in new subdivisions in rural Loudoun. These PDR, TDR, and easements are in themselves not going to do the trick. If we're worried about too much traffic, if we're worried about losing farmland, if we're worried about all these things that are happening with development, we absolutely have to reduce the number of houses that can be built in new subdivisions.
Thank you. Supervisor Kirshner.
So I definitely favor a PDR program, a robust PDR program, as I mentioned earlier, and that is a 5 cents on the personal property tax that is paid by data centers, which will yield somewhere between 9 and 10 million a year. And we set that out for 10 years as one of the tools in the toolbox. I also want to address a couple of things that John has said specifically, because I have a three-way punch. If we do anything to discourage conservation easements, those who are doing it in the county, and there's a handful of them, there's about 10 of them who are doing it in the county, and they have preserved thousands and thousands of acres in Western Loudoun. We will now have one person competing for development in Western Loudoun, and guess who that is? It is the developer. And I'm going to tell you that a landowner is going to go for the highest and best use for his or her land. And when we take out the person who has preserved over 85,000, when I mean the person, those who are putting their land in conservation easement, when we take that competitive person out, then we only have one person competing for it. And so we have to make sure that whatever we do in the zoning ordinance, one, isn't illegal, and we're not going to get sued, because a lot of things that John has suggested will actually result in that. But we also need to make sure that we protect those who are really preserving Western Loudoun.
Time.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, great. I'm going to take the opportunity to ask just a real quick question of both of you, very quick. So I've been here for 25 years, and about it's at least 23 years ago, there was a PDR program. And it was embraced by the county. Now, it was challenged, and there was a lot of pushback, but it was actually implemented, went in, and the next board just completely defunded it, and it became a distant memory until recently, okay? So what can you tell the people in Western Loudoun? How will you drive this policy for PDR or TDR and not let it just fall off and become dormant until the next Board of Supervisor election in 4 years? So, John, you want just like 15 seconds?
15 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. I think Caleb referred to this. We need to have Eastern Loudoun on board with this. There are 8 of 9 or 7 of 9 supervisors. We need to have them on board. This has been portrayed as a favor that Eastern Loudoun does for Western Loudoun. It is not. It's something that's beneficial to the entire county. It helps to reduce our future tax burdens. It preserves an area that lots of people in Eastern Loudoun value extremely much. So we need to bring the Eastern supervisors around. I've had some recent exchanges with a couple of them, and I think they misunderstand, some things about those
Okay.
programs. So
And you think you can do that?
I think,
Bring them around?
yes, I think I can do that.
Okay. Caleb.
So my background as a lobbyist and as an attorney, where I'm negotiating cases all the time, really comes into play when I'm able to get things done. I just listed a few things that I was able to get done in my first term. I have a litany list that I could go over if we had time to do it, but we don't. The truth of the matter is, it is about relationships. It is about getting these things done. And I have an excellent relationship with every single member on this current board. We probably will have a few extra new members that come on this board. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'm going to continue to work with them. I believe I can count the votes right now. There are a couple that may waver, but we got to hold them in line, and we got to get them on board. And I think we've got the votes now for a PDR program. TDR program is going to be a little more difficult.
Okay, time. Next question.
All right, the theme continues. We're going to hit another tool in the toolbox here. And this is the discussion about prime agricultural soils, which has a big interplay, as everybody knows, with easements, conservation easements. So do you support the draft prime agricultural soils zoning ordinance amendment as currently proposed? Specifically, do you support the provision requiring preservation within a cluster subdivision of a minimum of 70% of the property's prime ag soils?
I believe you're first, right?
So people need to realize that the initiative of 70% is quite untenable, because I'm a big believer in personal property rights, and let me try to tell you why. If you bring in a requirement for 70% of prime ag soils, you're going to destroy the value of most people's land. And we tried to do this in 2000, not prime ag soil specifically, but we tried to downzone, which is essentially what the prime ag soil initiative is. We tried to downzone, and I know John wasn't here at the time. I was. We tried to downzone in 2002 and 2003, and what happened? Property owners all over Loudoun rushed to grandfather their property in so they could develop it. And so over the last 15 years, most of the developments that you are seeing are a result of an attempt to downzone in 2002 and 2003. I just had an experience with Wheatland, on Wheatland Estates on Wheatland Road. You know why that development was produced? That development came about because there was an attempt to downzone. The farmer, who by the way is still farming today, rushed, grandfathered, or sold it to a developer who developed it. He would have kept it, he would have kept producing. And that is one of the issues that when you're dealing with a zoning ordinance. First, you have to make sure you're not downzoning, you're not going to get sued, but you also have to make it somewhat reasonable so you don't destroy people's property value. If you read the Washington Post article just a few weeks ago, we have a major landowner in Western Loudoun County who has 1,500 acres. Guess what he's doing right now as a result of the 70% in prime ag? Now, we can live with some. I think we can get to 40 or 50, and that will be reasonable, and landowners understand it's not going to destroy my value.
Time.
But he's rushed. Can I finish my sentence?
Yeah.
He is rushing to grandfather that property in. There are unintended consequences, and don't let anyone fool you whatsoever. It's going to happen. So we have to get it right and not destroy property values. I favor it, but not at 70%.
So we have a very clear difference of opinion here. I completely favor the ordinance, the amendment, and I absolutely believe it should be 70%. We have to keep in mind that we've lost dozens of square miles of prime farmland in Western Loudoun over the last few decades. It is not true that 70% preservation of prime soils would destroy the property value. It is possible that on a few properties, because every property is different, it might slightly reduce the potential sale value to a developer and therefore the value of an easement. It is not true that it would destroy anybody's property value. Remember that development rights that we're talking about are maximum lot yield in the zoning ordinance. There is no such term as development rights. It is not the same thing as property rights. So we're talking about a small change in valuation. The other thing I would mention is that there was a discussion, long discussion over this over the past few months, in which a group of people from both sides are discussing this. The people who were trying to get this 70% preservation bent over backwards to provide a lot of flexibility in the zoning ordinance to make sure that there was no loss of development rights with the preservation of prime soils. They bent over backwards. All of their changes were accepted. There was no movement on the other side.
Time. This is an important issue, and it will be coming to everybody, coming to the board soon. So I have one question to ask. The cluster subdivision already requires preserving 70% of the land on the originating tract. So by extension, it seems, because all of it's not prime soils, is it truly unreasonable to expect a higher number of preservation or not? I mean, that's my question, and you guys, Caleb, you have an answer, and I'm sure John does as well.
So I'm not entirely sure I understand the answer or the question. I'm sorry, but I think what you're trying to ask is simply this: since we're already preserving 70%, why not make it prime ag? Why not make that more of the prime ag soil? Is that essentially your question?
That is the question. That why couldn't 70% of the prime ag soils on that land be preserved?
So 70% of open space is currently what's required if you're going to do a cluster development. The problem when you develop in any piece of land in the western part, you have to have drain fields, and certain farm soils are the best for that. And so when you require a certain percentage that is too high, what ultimately will happen is you will cut down on the number of lots a person has. Now that sounds great because we don't want any building out there, but I've already talked about a number of the impacts that is going to have. As a matter of fact, those doing the conservation easement say if it passes in its current form, we are pulling out of the conservation easement process. And let me tell you something. This is the whole concept here is we want to preserve prime. I'm about preserving prime ag soils because it's future soils for farming. But but I want to give you statistics. Conservation easements and those who are doing it are going to leave if this happens. They have preserved 22,000 acres of prime ag soils. Guess how much we have lost in cluster developments in prime ag soils? And this is a 2022 statistic. We only lost 890 acres of prime ag soils through cluster development. So we have a ratio of more than 20-1 taking place through preserving prime ag through conservation easements versus what we're losing in cluster development. So we have to be careful. There are always unintended consequences.
Thank you. And John?
Boy, there's a lot of things, and I apologize. We're arguing to a certain extent about facts here. But a couple of things. I have neighbors, a number of neighbors I know, and many friends who have put their land into conservation easement. They did not do it because they would have a slight reduction in, they would have done it otherwise, regardless of whether this was in place. Septic fields do not need to be on prime soils. If you look at Miller's Reserve just up here, what happened is that 70% of the land that was supposedly preserved for agricultural uses is completely unfarmable. The prime soils that were on that property are now occupied by houses. They are destroyed forever. That's what we're trying to avoid here. If you're already preserving 70% of the land, and say you have, say 30% of the property is prime soils, which, might be an average type thing. The question is, can you put that 30% of prime soils on the 70% that you already have to protect? And what we're saying is, yes, you can do that in most cases. If you have a property with 100% prime soils, which doesn't exist, it might be a problem. But that is the bugaboo that we're being given to say we should not preserve prime soils because it might reduce development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys. That was important. Next question.
Okay, we're shifting gears here a little bit, and I'm going to talk about Metro. Regardless of whether you agree with the decision a decade ago to bring the Silver Line to Loudoun County, Metro is here. The county's Metro stations opened as ridership system-wide was down significantly in the wake of the pandemic, and Metro faces a fiscal cliff next year. Was bringing Metro to Loudoun a mistake? What, if anything, should the county do to contribute to Metro's operating budget? Is investing in Metro's future a good investment for Loudoun County?
I think, John?
Yeah, Metro has been, a very, very difficult thing, and some of it is in the planning process, and some of it is events that's out of everybody's control. All of us in Western Loudoun, East and West, are very concerned about traffic congestion and traffic safety and so forth. My opinion is that urban mass transit is an important solution to that. It's not the only solution, but we have to encourage use of public transit to address, the overcrowding on our roads. So I think we need to stick with Metro. I don't have the answers in terms of the fiscal, the fiscal overhang right now. We just have to deal with it as best we can. And in the long term, we need to actually, one of the solutions is we need to have more dense development around the Metro system so that the ridership actually increases and it can pay for itself.
Thank you.
So there's really two. So first of all, if I had been on the board, I wouldn't have voted for Metro, but I wasn't on the board at the time. But we have it now, and quite frankly, it's an asset we got to figure out how to use rather than an albatross that's currently hanging around our neck. Basically, what we're paying into Metro at the moment, the county's paying $30 million a year, and the state's splitting that with us, and they're paying another $30 million a year. So how do we deal with that? Well, Maryland, the state pays for it all. So I think one of the first things we as the county need to do, and I've talked to a number of my fellow supervisors about doing that, is try to get the state to pay for that so it takes the burden off the local county taxpayers and take on that additional $30 million, because there is a formula, and that price tag is going to go up and up and up. The second thing I think we really need to do is how do we really make Metro worthwhile? And we have a couple Metro stops where we have a lot of development that's going to happen around that. We've already had Rivanna come in, which we in the Board of Supervisors have fast-tracked. It's going to be high-density business as well as residential in that particular area. But there are about 4 or 5 landowners. I've already been talking to them about coming together, trying to fast-track their projects, but really getting cohesive projects that work together to ensure that Metro works. It's going to take some time, but I think we're going to get there. And I think it's really the only way to make it worthwhile.
Time. Thank you. Next. There you go.
I just want to sit down. It's been a long day.
Moving on to affordable housing, there is a widely held belief that Loudoun County is experiencing a housing crisis. A view echoed by the county's own affordable housing report from last year. The county's affordable dwelling unit program is not projected to address the problem in the next decade. What more can and should the board do to address this problem?
So the board is doing a lot of different things to address, and it's really the supply side of what I call affordable housing. Obviously, we've dedicated 1 cent to the Affordable Housing Fund that developers can borrow from and bring about affordable housing. We have a whole department within the county that deals with that. We are working with asking developers. We have a whole rehab program that is in process, and we're asking developers to develop X number of units when they come in for a rezoning or zoning modification, whatnot, to provide certain housing for anywhere from the median income on down to 30% of the income, depending on the type of house. But I think there's some things and aspects of the affordable housing issue that we're missing and that we haven't done. And I think people don't really think of the unintended consequences. One is the taxes that we are raising on houses. Do you realize that we've raised taxes? When I say we, this board has raised taxes 4 years in a row. I've opposed that, I'll have you know. But guess what kind of pressure that puts on all affordable housing? Because every single unit becomes more and more and more expensive every year. I mean, myself, I'm paying $3,000 more per year than when I went and sat on the board just for my house. The other thing we have to think about is the unintended consequences when we ask developers to develop more affordable housing than really they can afford. Because when they have to develop affordable homes, that is homes at $200,000 or $300,000 that cost them $400,000 or $500,000 to put in, guess what they have to do to make a profit on the development? And I'm not talking about in Western Loudoun. We're not going to improve these in Western Loudoun. I'm talking about how we're doing in Eastern Loudoun. That makes all the rest of the houses far more expensive. Developers are willing to do it. We have to balance it. Thank you.
Time.
First of all, I've heard from a number of people, talking to people around, Catoctin District, that there's concern that we not create a sense that there's some sort of entitlement to unaffordable housing or to a short commute, and I totally agree with that. Ann and I, when we were first married, lived in a very humble place in a very sketchy neighborhood for a number of years, and that was okay. We do need, this is not a problem just in Loudoun County. This is a national problem, it's a regional problem. It's not something that we can fix here. We do need to do better, and I totally agree with that. I think the priority should be to focus on getting what Matt Letourneau has called affordable by design, which essentially means small units, more small units. And there are different ways of doing that. I'm not sure, this is something to discuss with developers. I'm not sure their business is that unprofitable that they couldn't provide more small units than they currently do. And I think we should push that as far as we can with developers, try to get as high a percentage as possible. The other thing, there's a program I've heard of that's worked in other parts of the country where jurisdictions say, here, we've got a design for small units. If you can build to that design, we're going to streamline the process. We're going to reduce your development costs, no legislative process and all that kind of stuff, reduce the costs, and in that way incentivize the developers to build more small units. So I think we should be looking at that too.
Thank you.
All right. Next topic is somewhat related. It's about infill. So the board made zoning decisions 2 and 3 decades ago that assumed market demand for non-residential developments like shopping centers and office complexes in Eastern Loudoun. Much of that demand has not panned out, and the board has recently considered several applications seeking to rezone land, either for data centers or more dense housing developments. Many of these applications have centered on infill projects of less than 20 acres. How would you approach such applications?
Okay, first of all, I have to admit that I have not had the opportunity to be involved in these kinds of discussions about developments in Eastern Loudoun, so I'll admit that I have things to learn on that. I think the bottom line is, yes, if we zoned for development that is no longer needed, we absolutely need to be looking at zoning for things that are needed. And we do need more dense housing near the metro and near public transit in Eastern Loudoun. So absolutely, in principle, I totally agree that if we have those kinds of areas where we can rezone and get more housing, especially affordable housing, absolutely we should do that.
So really, the concept for infill housing is we want to utilize this piece, and it's again in your higher density areas, around your suburban areas, and your areas, and we want to make sure those get the best use possible. And so we have come up, and when I say we, the staff of the county has come up, and it's being used in other jurisdictions with what they call the PUD program. And it essentially allows a developer to come in and say, hey, I have a concept, here's what it is, rather than going through all the zoning modifications, will this work and will this be accepted? And I think we're gonna utilize that a lot on these smaller fill-in areas that were needed. Because listen, there is a handful of really good developers in the county that really bring a really good product, are very conscientious, and want to do what's best for the county. And I think we as supervisors who have worked with them for 4 years really know who they are. And those who will bring those kind of conceptual projects for those infill areas, we're going to listen to. Obviously, we have a duty to make sure that they work well. But I think that part of the zoning ordinance is going to work well for these infill projects.
Thank you. Next question.
The next question is about public facilities. Have recent boards done an adequate job of planning for parks, schools, and other public facilities to meet the needs of the growing population, especially in Eastern Loudoun? What should the board do differently?
So we're getting a lot of Eastern Loudoun questions, which is great. Anyone here from Eastern Loudoun? No? One person, excellent. So I'm going to direct my answer to you. Obviously, our needs, whether it's our fire stations, our roads, our police stations, and our CNA, is something that's always difficult to keep up with, simply because we are a growing community. I think our last census, we had 35,000 or so in the county, and of course that's rapidly growing. So the CNA is always difficult to keep up with. But one of the things I think we need to consider is, and I have a list of things that we should work through, is we need to really look at our capital needs, and do we actually need every single one of those, number one. We need to look at what is most important to quality of life and concentrate on those first. And I think third, we need to consider land banking right now for some of these future projects, parks, rec, trails, passive area, et cetera. The reason I say that is land is not going to go down in value in Western Loudoun. We have a thriving data center business. We are flush, we really should be flush with cash if we don't overspend. And so we have future projects 10 years into the CNA that we need to consider land banking for those right now. And we're borrowing at 1% and 2% when inflation is at 7%. So those are some things we're working on currently in the county.
Thank you.
My opinion is that the county has for decades done extremely poor planning in terms of allowing growth of the population to exceed the capital needs assessment and planned public facilities. And that's the fundamental problem we're dealing with across the whole county right now, particularly with the rapid increase in county spending, which of course puts pressure on our tax burdens. That's caused by all the growth that we have permitted without thinking about in advance about what's going to happen. This is actually, to pivot to Western Loudoun, this is actually my primary concern, one of my primary concerns about Western Loudoun, is that we have all this by right growth planned. 10,000 houses could be built under our current zoning, more houses could be built in Western Loudoun. We don't have the capacity, our roads, as you know, having driven here, can't handle that. The county is allowing population growth and growth in general to exceed the capacity of the public infrastructure system and public services. We can't allow that to continue.
Thank you. Next question.
John? Taxes. What specific changes, if any, should the next board implement to the county's operating expenditures and property tax rates?
Expenditures and tax rates, those are two different things as far as I know. But what I would say is that if we want tax relief, and we should have some tax relief, we have to look at spending. Spending, for the reasons we were just discussing, has been going up extremely rapidly, and we have to get that under control. In the last 4 years, the county's administrative expenses increased by 10% per year. That we just can't continue to do that. So we have to get control of spending. In terms of taxes, obviously, for those of us who think balancing a budget is important, we need to have the revenues to cover our expenses. The data centers have been, a huge boon temporarily for as long as they're around and as long as they're producing revenue to us, and we need to take advantage of that. I think that we need to look now at using some of the data center revenues to provide tax relief to homeowners and to other businesses whose business costs are going up because of the data centers. So I would like to see some tax relief that is affordable. And, in terms of future administrative costs, we're just going to have to look at any increase in the schools, which are 60% of the budget, in their administrative costs, we're just going to have to look at very carefully, because everybody wants to make sure that educators are paid a competitive wage or a competitive, package, and we need to preserve that. We have to look really, really carefully at administrative costs.
Time. Thank you.
So just briefly, I want to address this 10,000 home matter that John mentioned before. That's actually a fallacy. There's no way we're going to build 10,000 homes in Western Loudoun. First of all, that's an old statistic, and if you ask any planner or anyone who understands the restrictions on property, it's probably the maximum homes you could probably actually build in Western Loudoun probably are somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000. So don't let that statistic scare you, and we're rapidly preserving this land, and we're making huge progress. In order to address the question in terms of taxes, well, in expenditures, the first thing I would do is quit taking trips to Ghana and Uruguay. I think we need to kind of stop that whole process. But the next thing I think we need to take into consideration, one of the difficulties sharpening our pens is inflation. Bidenomics is killing us. As a matter of fact, our budget last year grew by 4 cents above the equalized rate, or 3 cents, or 2 or 3 cents of the 4 cents that it grew, simply because we were trying to keep up with inflation and the cost of living. And so it's very difficult when you're a locality to try to budget when the national economy is in shambles. And so we are struggling certainly with that, and hopefully that will clear up. But I have always been, and I am a fan of the sticking at the equalized rate. Unfortunately, this board, despite my objections to it, has in the last couple of rounds has not made the equalized rate one of our target rates when we give guidance to our superintendent. And the one tax that I think we should look seriously at eliminating that will help all Loudoners is the stinking car tax. We need to get rid of that. We need to see that go away, and we need to phase it out.
Time.
And we can put that, I think, on the backs of the data centers. I know we think the data center is the answer for everything, but that car tax is a huge impact, and I think it needs to go away.
Okay, I think we're moving back into Western Loudoun now. Come back.
Route 15. So the board previously committed to a nearly $500 million project to widen Route 15 north of Leesburg. Should the county move forward with this plan, or should the next board reverse this decision?
This decision is not going to get reversed. I'm just going to tell you that. This project is well down the road. We have spent millions and millions of dollars on this project. I have championed this project. This project was on board when I came on, and I have accelerated this project. And let me tell you why. 97% of the residents during the initial phase of this wanted tremendous improvements on Route 15. The majority of the stakeholders wanted improvements, including at least 4 lanes up to Montetressor. All the partnership agencies wanted a bypass around Luckett's and improvements up and down Route 15. There are huge safety concerns. I mean, you talk to my predecessor, Gary Higgins, and Stacy Carey, his chief of staff, on the deaths they had to deal with. As a prosecutor, I had to go to deaths on Route 15. And I tell you, there is nothing more disheartening than seeing a mother lying there dead because she was hit head on by someone who hit her head on. She was killed, the other person was fine, and her phone begins to ring. So these are quality of life issues that need to happen. And that's one of my goals on all of our major corridors, Route 9, Route 7, and Route 15, and that is to make them because they're major arteries in the county. 15 is currently designed for 12,000 cars a day, and we get about 30,000 cars a day. And we have safety improvements that we're implementing at Route 9, a roundabout at 287 and 9, and we're adding another lane on Route 7 from Route 9 down to the Greenway. These are going to help. This is going to help
Time.
traffic flow tremendously through back and forth in the county, and people get home safely.
I'm not in favor of the project. I don't know if it will continue to go through. I hope not, for two reasons. First, all the people who showed up to talk about the Route 15 project in the hearings, in the public hearings, talked about safety, and they brought up anecdotes like the one that Caleb just mentioned. I still don't get how speeding up traffic through a rural area onto an area that then narrows to 2 lanes or opens from 2 lanes to 4 lanes is going to improve traffic safety. I just don't get it. One of the things I see going down Route 9 to the roundabout at 7 is that people who are following you for a long way in 2 lanes, as soon as they hit a 4-lane circle, or a 2-lane circle, they rush to try to get ahead. You have a lot of reckless driving problems. Increasing the speed is not going to improve safety. I would like to see safety improvements that, like signage and pullouts for enforcement and roundabouts that will keep the traffic moving safely. The cost is really significant too. We're talking about $150,000 per resident in that area
Time.
for those developments. So I've got more to say on that.
Okay. You're up next.
The next question is about Route 9. Some residents and commuters have expressed concern about heavy trucks using Route 9. If elected, would you ask the Commonwealth Transportation Board to restrict through trucks on Route 9?
Yes, I think it depends on the size.
Okay.
But it is ridiculous. At the circles here in Hillsborough and elsewhere, as I was coming up here from Purcellville just today, there was an extremely long truck, and I'm sorry, I'm not expert on truck lengths, but there was an extremely long truck just turning right onto Hillsborough Road off of 9 here, and it took him 10 minutes, and he had to do like several back and forth to get over it. It just doesn't work. I understand that for some truckers, you want to get there as fast as you can, and maybe taking a 2-lane rural road might be faster in the best of circumstances. Certainly not these days. But sometimes if you're preserving a rural area and you're preserving roads in a rural area, you can't consider them to be, high impact, long distance trucking routes. And so I'm just not with that. I think it's a good idea to restrict trucks. Do I have a couple of seconds left?
Yes.
I just want to go back to the 10,000 houses because we're arguing over facts here, but I'm quoting from county documents. I haven't seen any county documents mentioning 4,000 or 5,000. I've seen county documents referring to 11,000. So I'm just going on what we've got from the county. Thanks.
Time. Thank you. Okay.
So in my last campaign and this campaign, I was very direct in terms of making sure that we live a quality of life and our loved ones get home safe. And if that means restricting the length of vehicles that travel Route 9, we have restrictions even on Route 15. I mean, I prosecuted these cases for years when trucks would come down. It's not easy. You need enforcement areas, but we can certainly put restrictions on them. Obviously, you need to do things like contact ways, make sure they're not sending trucks down there. We can bypass them in other ways, but it's certainly something we should probably look at and ensure that over-length vehicles that are not appropriate for both the tonnage and the type of rural road that we have are not coming down. I mean, we have Route 7. If you're coming from West Virginia, you can go down, catch Route 7 and go down. So larger trucks should indeed not be allowed to go down rural roads. What that actual size is, I think, is really a question to be determined, but I would certainly support a review of this and restrictions as needed.
All right. Thank you. Next question.
Some landowners in Western Loudoun have been contacted by solar energy companies interested in building utility-scale installations on their property. The county's current zoning ordinance does not permit utility-scale solar arrays on rural zone land. Should the zoning ordinance continue to prohibit solar arrays, or should the board reconsider this provision?
So I'm definitely not in favor of solar arrays in Western Loudoun. We have worked far too long and hard to ensure the beauty of this area. And it comes with its own set of problems. You can't really eat a solar array. I think you can eat a cow. And I think we want to make sure that that's the kind of thing that we're doing out here. I think once you open up that Pandora's box, you're not going to put the genie back in it. I guess I mixed up my metaphors. The genie in the bottle, you're not going to put the genie back in it once you open up that Pandora's box, so to speak. And I would certainly not approve that. I can't imagine driving down to go to a winery, a brewery, to go to a local farmer's market and seeing a cluster of solar arrays to my right or to my left, or sitting up on the mountain here, having sipping a glass of wine and overlooking it. I think it's a mistake. I think it's wrong-headed. I'm sure it would be very profitable for many of these places. It's not something we've opened up in Western Loudoun. We have a huge agritourism business here, and I think it would be a huge distraction from that. So I would never support solar arrays in Western Loudoun.
I totally agree. I think I agree with what Caleb just said. One of the big considerations as they're finding out in Eastern Loudoun is that when you have any kind of power production center, you need to have transmission lines and a lot of other infrastructure, which has to go over people's properties. You're talking about, potential takings and things like that to move the power from where it's being produced to where it's, where it's being delivered. So that's another reason I think why it would be a really bad idea in Western Loudoun.
All right.
All right. Rural policy area. Do you believe it's possible to retain Western Loudoun as a permanent rural area? What policy actions do you support towards this end? And will you commit to preserving the current RPA boundaries?
Absolutely. It can be preserved and it has to be preserved, but we can't take this for granted. And this relates to many things that we've been talking about up here, the benefits of PDR, TDR, easements, and so forth. The main difference between your two candidates here, is that I think the only way that we can ensure that we preserve this area the way we want it, that we keep the traffic from overwhelming our rural roads, that we make it safe, that we preserve our gravel road system, we preserve our farms and things like that. The only way to do that is to reduce the number of houses that you put in new rural subdivisions in Western Loudoun. The amazing thing about this is that currently in our area here in northwestern Loudoun, it's called the AR1 zoning district. You are allowed to put 3 times more houses in a cluster subdivision like the one up the road here than you can if you're in the Middleburg area, or in Fauquier, or in Clark, or in Prince William, in their rural areas. Why on earth does Loudoun say, come here because we'll give you 3 times more houses for the same acreage? What a way to attract. Why are we seeing all these? Why do we have 30 new subdivisions being put in right now? Why do we have the one up on Harpers Ferry Road? Why do we have it? Because it is so attractive to develop at the current density. We have to reduce that. I'm not talking about, something other than what we already have in neighboring jurisdictions, but we have to do that.
Time.
So I think we can absolutely do it, but I think what Mr. Ellis doesn't understand is we have a very small timetable. And I'm talking about a small timetable. And why I say that is you can say, okay, we're going to cut down on the density. First, you have to do it correctly, and it takes a number of years to do it correctly. You have to do a full comprehensive change of the general plan. You can't just go piecemeal. That's called, that's illegal, and you will get sued and you will lose, and then we're right back to where we are. But so we have a limited period of time. What happened in Prince William should wake every single person in this room. It should shake you to your knees. And what happened in Prince William is that board outvoted the equivalent of their Western supervisors, and they opened up their rural policy called the Rural Crescent to digital development. And there is incredible pressure right now to build anywhere and everywhere. So the only way we are going to permanently preserve Western Loudoun is not to say, oh, let's use our zoning ordinance and these sorts of things. It is to accelerate preservation programs. And that's what I call my Invest in the West. We need a TDR program. We need a PDR program. We need to make sure our conservation easement partners and people putting property into conservation easement continue to do it. And they are doing it at breakneck speeds. People don't realize. You see a development go in, but you don't see the other thousands and thousands of acres that are being developed.
Thank you. Karen.
Okay, the next question is about Loudoun's towns. Incorporated towns in Virginia run many of their own affairs, including zoning law. At the same time, town residents are also county residents, and they pay the same county taxes as everyone else. Has the county done an adequate job providing town residents with services equitable to those received by non-town residents? As a supervisor of a district with 5 of the county's 7 towns, how will you ensure equitable services to town residents, and how will you convince the board at large to support you?
So every town is different. Some towns want more help than others. Some of our villages want more help than others. Some have more resources than others. But I have an incredible track record of helping our towns and villages in the Catoctin district. Obviously, Purcellville, Round Hill, and Hillsborough are now in the Catoctin district, and I will carry that forward. But let me just give you a couple of examples of the things that we have done to help our villages and towns in the last 4 years. In Lovettsville, we completed and oversaw the completion of the park as well as the community center. In Luckett, we secured funding for a critical sidewalk project. We saved the volunteer fire department. We saved the Luckett's Ruritan trash pickup program, and we passed a small area plan to ensure that Luckett's is preserved and its historical aspects are preserved for many generations. In Waterford, we brought traffic calming measures to that village, as well as I championed and brought forth the Preserving the Landmark program there. I'm already beginning to work in Catoctin. I met with Mayor Ramsey, and when I found out there was an out-of-town water problem for those residents over there, we are working with the county and the town to ensure that probably bring some grant money from our water and sewer fund to help those out-of-town residents as well. So I plan to continue to help these towns. We're doing a lot of work to help these towns. And one of the things that I have done every budget season is the towns in my district, I have called the mayors. I said, what kind of needs do you have? So they are important partners. They're important to how we look at the West. And I will continue to help them, including the new towns and villages that are now in the Catoctin district.
Thank you.
I think it's very difficult to say whether a taxpayer in Purcellville or Hamilton is getting their fair share of services from the taxes that they pay to the county. I think, as Caleb is saying, the county does provide a lot of services to people in the towns, and so that needs to be taken. It is not a matter of just the person in the towns paying the taxes to the county and not getting any benefit. They are getting benefits. So it's extremely difficult to, and it is different for every town and village to determine, whether that's a fair share. I think it's really important to make sure that if a town needs more help, for example, from the sheriff's office or on the water project in Round Hill and so forth, that the county steps up. And there are constituents as well as the town's constituents, so we need to be there to help. I've been really, really disturbed, whichever side you take about it, by the fighting between the county and the town of Purcellville. We have to get together and work these things out like adults, and we can't be fighting. We're representing the same people, and we need to make sure that they get the services they need from both the county and the towns.
Time. One quick question, very quick. Would you, as the Catoctin supervisor, in the next board, would you advocate for some regular town and county and board of supervisors meetings to kind of talk through some of the issues on a regular basis? As we know, there's been, with Percival and Leesburg, there are issues. But would you commit to asking and suggesting to the rest of the board that it would be a good idea on a regular basis to meet with the towns?
And I'm not sure, I don't quite understand the question other than, I talk to the mayors in my district on a regular basis. Are you saying with the whole board as a whole, or to bring the coalition in to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I think it's a great idea. I know during COVID, Chair Randall set up a call regularly, I think weekly. I was on those calls oftentimes with the mayors, and I think that was a very helpful exercise that we participated in, especially during a very important pandemic crisis throughout the county. And I think there are certain issues that maybe that surround the various towns, and I think not just the towns, but the villages. And again, we don't have elected individuals in the villages, but we do have represented in those villages. And again, I have taken it on myself to contact the villages and the towns in the Catoctin district that I currently represent when budget issues come up to see how we can help them. So I think maybe involving more supervisors would be helpful, maybe perhaps in our TLUC or in our finance committee meetings.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like Caleb has been meeting regularly with the mayors, and that's a good thing, and certainly I would do that too. I think it's important to be proactive and have regularly scheduled meetings with them. It's also important not only to have the meetings, but actually to solve problems. We have a number of ongoing disputes between the county and the towns and villages that need to be resolved, and they need to be done with respect from the perspective of the county towards the local concerns. I'm thinking about Philemont, the fire station right now, and some of the issues like the Northern Collector in Percival. The county, needs to, a lot of us believe that government should be close to the people. The county should be thinking the same way when it's talking to the mayors and other people in the towns about their issues.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question.
I think we're still on John.
Yes.
A question we can all support. What does quality of life mean to you? And what, if anything, should the next board do to provide residents with a better quality of life?
So quality of life, of course, is very subjective, and different people, have different needs and different preferences, and that's great. And when it comes to public services and public facilities, we need to recognize that there are different needs and there are different wants. Personally, for me, my wife and I are master naturalists. We love natural areas. We like to hike. We like to count butterflies and do that kind of thing. That's not for everybody, I know. Other people like outdoor recreation. We have a large number of equine people who have horses. We need to have places for them to exercise that are adequate for their needs. We have a very large population in in all of our towns of young people with young families. They need recreation fields. And absolutely, I totally support, and I love it when we get the kids outdoor for exercise, whether it's structured or not. And so we need to provide those facilities. There is one issue associated with that, and that is lights. And in general, I am not in favor of putting lights up for nighttime play in recreational areas in rural areas, because it's highly disruptive to agriculture and a lot of other things. But yes, we need to provide a whole range of facilities to people. People are here in Western Loudoun because they love the character of it, they love the history, they love the scenery, they love the farms, they love the recreation opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And we need to recognize that there's a broad range of things that we need to provide for them.
Thank you.
So again, my whole campaign and my 4 years on the board has really been surrounding quality of life issues, and I mentioned those at the beginning. But if you really were to ask me what I think generally most people think is quality of life, it really means the opportunity to better oneself and work and be dedicated and be able to take care of one's family and spend quality time with our children. We want to know that our kids are indeed safe, that our kids are indeed safe in their schools. We want to be able to make sure that we can pay the bills and perhaps have a little bit more to put away at the end of every single paycheck. And for me, personally, it's a nice glass of brandy, watching a sunset, smoking a cigar. But one thing I think we need to keep in mind is that government can actually ruin and hurt and damage quality of life. And that's why I think we have to make sure as a county government we spend wisely, we keep taxes as reasonable and as low as we reasonably can, while at the same time providing the services that people want, and that's always a significant balance. But I think most of the time people would prefer to have their own dollars, to spend their own dollars, to be able to save and do things for themselves and for their family. And they also want to make sure they get their kids home, themselves home safely. That's why road projects are such an important part. And of course, they want to enjoy here in Western Loudoun the beauty that we have come to enjoy. And that's why our preservation programs are so critical to our quality of life.
Time. Thank you. All right. Excellent. Well, it's 8:20. We're right on track here, and we have one final question, and I believe that's
All right.
Scott's question.
Last question of the night, collective bargaining. So the current board voted along party lines to allow county employees to negotiate collective bargaining agreements if they choose. How should the board handle collective bargaining in the upcoming term?
So many people don't know this, but one of my major parts of my job is I do a lot of collective bargaining. As a matter of fact, I represent police unions in Virginia. And I actually successfully negotiated the first collective bargaining agreement in Alexandria. My firm did, and we got a good product for the police officers down there and a good contract. I voted against collective bargaining in Loudoun for a number of different reasons. But first, we had just completed a class and comp study. We knew we were adequately paying our folks in all the various departments, and so there was really no need to implement collective bargaining. Like I said, it was a very partisan thing. Secondly, there are significant startup costs to collective bargaining and significant operation costs to collective bargaining. I mean, it costs us many millions of dollars, and those are your taxpayer dollars that are going to negotiate these specific contracts. And third, I knew that once Alexandria, Arlington, and Fairfax and our Northern Virginia county partners completed their collective bargaining contracts, we're going to get to look at them and know how to pay our employees to make sure we continue to be competitive. Now, with that said, the form of collective bargaining we're doing here in Virginia is far better than many, many other states. What it does is it allows localities to say, hey, we're going to open up collective bargaining for our government and county, in this case, county employees. And so there is a level that maintains control. I don't think that it has helped our employees anymore and has cost the county a significant amount. And so that's why I did not support it.
This has become a highly partisan issue, and I think that's unfortunate. What I would want to talk to is the workers and see if they agree with Caleb that they feel that they are being adequately compensated, that they are getting a fair deal and everything like that, to see if there is really a problem that it is worth all that expenditure that he's mentioned of doing collective bargaining. But I think we do need to take care of our workforce. I think we need, one of the reasons we talk about affordable housing is that many of our public servants can't afford to live in our county. That includes government employees, county employees. So, I will not take I can't take right now a firm yes or no stance on it because there are costs that I recognize, but I definitely would want to talk to county employees and say, hey, are you getting the compensation you need? Do you feel you need collective bargaining? Obviously, the unions think they do, and then go from there. I would support it if the majority of the county employees think they need it.
All right. All right, thank you. Thank you guys very much for answering our questions. A big round of applause. I think we all really appreciate the civil dialogue and the thoughtfulness of your answers, and we really thank you for participating. So now we're going to go to our closing arguments, or our closing statements, let's put it that way. Maybe it's an argument for you. So I believe the coin toss meant that you would go first, and he deferred, right? So you would get the last closing statement. Yeah. No. And we have time, so we're going to go 3 minutes here, okay? And you don't have to take them all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
Thank you for that, Roger.
All right.
That's hard to tell a lawyer and that he can't take all 3 minutes. So really, I think the choice is simple here. I'm not a person who likes to brag, but I think, do you want a person representing you who has a wealth of experience in the areas that are necessary to help run a county? I am a finance major. I am a lawyer. I know land use law. I have lived in this county not just a short time, but I've lived here 28 years, and I love this county, and I have worked hard over the last 4 years on my on-the-job experience, so to speak. I have figured out how to get things done, and I am a person that gets things done. I've mentioned a lot of those tonight. I've mentioned how we've helped the towns and villages throughout Loudoun County, the Waterford Project. I've mentioned how I'm helping Hillsborough. I've mentioned how I've helped Luckett's, and we have improved and accelerated the improvements on Route 15 and Route 9 and Route 7. And I will tell you, these don't come easily. They come with grit, they come with a lot of passion, and they come with experience and an ability to navigate. And I have brought my negotiating skills, my lobbying skills, my legal skills to bear on this. And we are rapidly preserving Western Loudoun County. Yes, we're going to lose some properties to development. But even if you downzone, like John suggested, you're going to continue to lose those just simply because of the pressure that is coming. And so the question is, will 1, 2, 3, or 4 boards from now decide, you know what, we're done developing in Eastern Loudoun County, and we're going to open up Western Loudoun County. And unless we have taken the time, and I don't mean just the time, but unless we have felt the sense of urgency to preserve Western Loudoun County through my approach of preserving the West, there are going to be many properties that have not been put into preservation. And as a result, they're going to get developed just like Prince William has gotten developed. But I am the guy here that's going to get things done. I proved that when I brought forward, and no one thought we could bring fiber to Western Loudoun County, but we're bringing it to nearly 9,000 homes, and we did it in a very short period of time. It's going to be fully online around this time next year. That was something that the county had been working on for 8, 9, 10 years. I brought forward an initiative, and we made it happen. We're going to make that same type of thing happen on preserving Western Loudoun through preserving the West. We're going to make that same sort of thing happen by making sure our major corridors are fixed. And I would love to be your supervisor for the next 4 years to make sure these things continue to move along and we continue to preserve, keep us safe, and improve the quality of life in the wonderful county and the West that we have been enjoying for many, many years. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank
you. I would say that I think I have skills too, and I'm eager to offer them to the county. I'm not going to go into them in a lot of detail, but I think I have, for example, negotiated international trade deals and gotten things done and things like that. So I know how to do those kinds of things. I want to focus on what I think are the main differences between Caleb and I in this election. One, I haven't mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it, and I apologize. For waiting till now. But Mr. Kirshner has received more than $60,000 in contributions from developers, from a political action committee for developers. That's a lot of money. It's a lot more than I've received, and it obviously comes with expectations. I receive no money from developers, and I'm not beholden to any of them. Caleb, you know, I absolutely agree. It's really urgent that we do something to protect rural Loudoun. Caleb appointed a planning commissioner who's a real estate investor, and he is in favor of a lot more development. I would not appoint that kind of person to the planning commission. In a recent op-ed in the newspapers, Caleb said that he believes we're winning the race against development in Western Loudoun. I do not believe we're winning the race. I just sit in traffic and I look at the farms that have been destroyed. I don't believe we're winning the race. I think it's out of control and we need to act quickly. It is an urgent issue. In a upzoning decision last year in the transition policy area, Caleb said that he was against having more houses, and then he voted to upzone a development from 29 houses to 246 houses. I would not do that. I think it's important to do what you say when you say you're not going to vote for more houses. On the data centers, I think we both have said that we want to use the data centers, the revenue from the data centers. I am in favor actually of asking the data centers to shoulder a larger part of the burden. And then the last thing I would say is that, as I mentioned before, I think county staff are often not very knowledgeable about Western Loudoun and provide advice to supervisors that is not being adequately overseen. And if I'm elected, I'll work very full-time and make sure to hold them accountable. So if elected, my top priorities will be to, as we said, reduce the number of new houses that can be built in Western Loudoun. I would preserve prime soils at least 70% on each property. I would expedite traffic safety improvements without expanding the roads, get control of county spending, and provide targeted tax relief.
Time.
Okay.
You can wrap. I mean, yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. Supervisor Kirshner, John Ellis, thank you very much for, again, a really thoughtful and great debate and conversation, which I think will continue here for the next month or so, right? We've got the election coming up. Everybody, make sure you go out and vote. I think voting starts tomorrow, so you can go out and vote. I want to thank all of our mayors and Colt for sponsoring this, along with Loudoun Now and Loudoun Times Mirror. So thank you very much. I'm sure the candidates will be here for a while, so if you'd like to probably talk to them, maybe have a beer while you're talking to them. But I really thank you all for a very congenial and great conversation here tonight. Thank you very much. Best of luck. Thank you all.